What if I revealed that Cain's curse wasn't punishment for fratricide, but consequences for sabotaging a carefully orchestrated genetic experiment requiring specific bloodline outcomes? The narrative you've inherited, sibling rivalry ending in murder, divine exile as justice, is carefully crafted misdirection. The Hebrew manuscripts expose something infinitely more unsettling: a methodical intervention in human reproduction, demanding one lineage to flourish while another faced termination. And when Cain disrupted these protocols, his punishment wasn't heavenly retribution. It was strategic redeployment to an alternative operational division. Let's examine what truly transpired. Genesis 4:2 declares, Vayosef laledet et achiv et havel vayehi hevel, roetzon v'kayin haya oved adama. And she continued to give birth to his brother Abel, and Abel became a keeper of flocks, and Cain became a tiller of the ground. Yet the Hebrew exposes a crucial distinction. Vayosef doesn't translate as she bore again. It means she continued, or she added. These births weren't isolated incidents. They were linked results of a unified reproductive procedure. The text employs distinct verbs for their vocations. Abel Haya naturally became a shepherd, but Cain Haya Ovid was fashioned into a cultivator of the soil. One evolved organically, the other received assignment. Like test subjects allocated to different experimental pathways based on measurable traits. Consider the offering sequence. Genesis 4:3 states, Vayahi miketz yamim vayave Cain mipri ha'adama mincha lituich. And it came to pass at the end of days that Cain brought from the fruit of the ground an offering to Chaburi. But miketz yamim, end of days, isn't arbitrary timing. It's terminology for an operational cycle's completion, a predetermined evaluation moment when subjects submit results for analysis. Abel presents Meshelvehem Umikelev, from their fat portions and from their fat. Dual emphasis on premium genetic specimens, the Hebrew chelev transcends mere fat. It signifies vital essence, the concentrated hereditary potential within the sample. Abel was submitting prime breeding material for evaluation, yet Cain delivered mipri ha'adama, from the ground's fruit, standard produce, no selection parameters specified, no quality metrics. He presented agricultural output when the evaluation demanded biological specimens, like arriving at a medical screening with harvest reports instead of tissue samples. Can you imagine the moment of realization? Standing there with your offering, suddenly understanding you've fundamentally misread the entire system? The reaction proves instantaneous and significant. Genesis 4:4-5 declares, Vaisha yhwh el hevel vel minchato, vel Cain vel minchato lo sha'a. And YHWH regarded Abel and his offering, but unto Cain and his offering he did not regard. The Hebrew sha'a doesn't indicate approval or acceptance. It means to observe, to scan, to gather optical data. The monitoring apparatus registered Abel's samples. It couldn't even interpret Cain's agricultural display, because this evaluation never concerned worship. It measured hereditary compatibility. Mesopotamian parallels validate this reading. The Sumerian account of Emesh and Enten depicts two brothers receiving distinct production assignments from Enlil. One oversees livestock reproduction, the other agricultural development. When they submit their yields, Enlil's judgment isn't quality-based but compliance-focused. The brother who violated protocol gets transferred to frontier regions. Identical narrative framework, matching operational mechanics, alternative cultural encryption. But here's where the biblical version unveils its actual agenda. Following his offering's rejection, the text records, Vayicha lekayin me'od vayiplu panav, and it burned greatly to Cain, and his face fell. The verb kara exceeds simple anger. It means to burn with comprehension, to experience heated awareness. Cain abruptly grasped what the evaluation truly measured. His countenance fell from recognizing the ramifications. He wasn't merely failing agricultural standards. He was being designated for elimination from the reproductive program. The control system's reaction validates this. Genesis 4:6-7 documents YHWH stating, Lama chara lach velama naflu fanecha. Halo imtaitiv set vimlo taitiv lapetach chatat rovets. conventionally interpreted as inquiring about Cain's anger while warning of sin lurking nearby. Yet the Hebrew reveals an alternate narrative. Im taitiv set doesn't mean if you do well, you'll find acceptance. The term set indicates elevation, advancement, biological enhancement. The system states if you improve the hereditary presentation, and chatat rovets doesn't signify crouching sin. Chatat in archaic Hebrew meant purification procedure. Rovets means positioned, stationed, ready. A decontamination protocol awaits at the threshold. The system extended Cain one opportunity for compliance or face hereditary termination procedures. This is where Cain reached his decision. Genesis 4:8 reports of Vayomer Cain el Hevel, Achiv vayehi behiotam basade, vayakom Cain el Hevel achiv vayahargehu. And Cain said unto Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. Yet the Hebrew conceals something extraordinary. Following Vayomer Cain el Hevel Ashiv, Cain spoke to Abel his brother, no dialogue appears. The Masoretic manuscript remains blank. The Septuagint inserts, let us go to the field, but the original Hebrew contains nothing. Cain activated communication sequences with Abel, but the exchange was expunged. Why would Scripture omit the sole conversation between siblings before the killing, unless their discussion exposed excessive detail about the actual circumstances, about Cain's discoveries regarding the reproductive experiment and Abel's function within it? The killing wasn't impulsive fury, it was deliberate sabotage of biological protocols. Observe the monitoring apparatus's reaction. Genesis 4:9 records, Vayomer yhwh el Cain a hevel achika. And Yhwh said unto Cain, where is Abel your brother? This isn't information-seeking inquiry. The system possessed complete location data. The Hebrew A represents a positional query used to trigger diagnostic sequences. The system required Cain to register the termination incident in operational logs. Cain's answer proves illuminating. Lo yadati hashomer achi anochi. I know not. Am I my brother's keeper? The term shomer doesn't mean guardian or protector. It signifies observer, tracker, surveillance operative. Cain questions whether he was meant to supervise Abel's operational compliance. Was he accountable for his siblings' adherence to reproductive parameters? He's demonstrating awareness of command structure and challenging his rank within it. The system's reply confirms Abel's true purpose. Genesis 4:10 declares, Kol deme achikat zoakim elai min ha'adama. The voice of your brother's bloods cry unto me from the ground. Notice deme, bloods, plural. Not his blood, singular. His hereditary materials, his reproductive capabilities, his breeding contributions, all eliminated, crying from the earth where they've been absorbed. The soil had absorbed biological material designated for the reproduction program. Cain had intentionally contaminated the cultivation substrate with terminated hereditary specimens. What kind of mind recognizes such a system and chooses obliteration over compliance? Now arrives the curse. But it defies traditional interpretation. Genesis 4:11-12 declares, Vata arurata min ha'adamah asher patsta et biha lakachat et demei achika miadeka. Kitavod et ha'adamah lo tosef tet kocha lakna vanadtihye ba'aretz, conventionally rendered as cursed from the earth, which will withhold its strength, becoming fugitive and wanderer. Yet scrutinize the actual Hebrew. Arur ata min ha'adama doesn't mean cursed from the ground. The preposition min denotes separation, withdrawal. Cain faces extraction from the agricultural initiative. Lo tosef tet kocha doesn't mean the earth won't provide strength. Koch signifies power, capacity, hereditary potential. The cultivation program will discontinue biological enhancement for Cain, and navanad doesn't translate as fugitive and vagabond. Na indicates mobile, deployable. Nad means relocated, transferred. Cain receives reassignment as a mobile agent beyond the cultivation perimeter. He's not facing punishment. He's being recruited for an alternative division. Evidence emerges in Cain's reaction. Genesis 4:13-14 documents him declaring, Gadol avoni minso. My iniquity is greater than I can bear. Yet avon doesn't signify iniquity. It means deviation, variance from designated parameters. And minso doesn't mean endurance. It indicates promotion, advancement. Cain acknowledges his deviation exceeds promotional thresholds. He understands that disrupting reproductive procedures disqualifies standard hierarchy advancement. Then he unveils his genuine fear. Hen gerashta oti hayom me'al pene ha'adama umepanecha esater v'hayitina vanad ba'aretz v'haya cholmots iyahargani. Behold, you have expelled me today from the ground's surface, and from your presence I'll be concealed, and I'll become a mobile agent across the earth, and whoever locates me will terminate me. He doesn't fear random aggression. Kolmotzi doesn't mean anyone who discovers. It signifies any tracking system, any surveillance mechanism that identifies him. Without recognized designation in the command structure, other monitoring resources will eliminate him as an unregistered agent. The system's answer exposes Cain's genuine reassignment nature. Genesis 4:15 declares Lachen kol horeg Cain shivataim yukam vayasem, itual Cain ot levilti hakototo kolmots o. Therefore whoever terminates Cain, sevenfold vengeance shall follow. And Yo placed upon Cain a mark, preventing anyone finding him from striking him. The mark wasn't shameful branding. The Hebrew ot signifies beacon, transmitter, identification marker. Cain received a transponder designating him as protected personnel under special jurisdiction. The sevenfold retaliation wasn't divine shelter. It was security protocol warning that unauthorized elimination of this agent would activate severe countermeasures from management. Cain had entered covert operations. Scripture validates this interpretation. Genesis 4:16 states, Vayetze Cain milifne, Yhwh vayashev be'aretz nod kidmat Eden. And Cain departed from Yhwh's presence and settled in Nod's territory, east of Eden. But Nod isn't geographical designation. It signifies wandering mobility, operational flexibility. And Kidmat Eden doesn't mean Eden's east. Kidma indicates ancient preceding the origin point. Cain received assignment monitoring regions established before Eden's experimental sector. He operated in territories predating the current reproductive initiative. Here emerges the truly revelatory detail. Genesis 4:17 declares, Vayeda Cain et ishto vatahar vateled, et chanoch vayehi bone, ir vayikra, shem ha'ir kshem beno chanoch. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he constructed a city, naming it after his son Enoch. What was this wife's origin? If Adam and Eve were humanity's sole progenitors, who was Cain's spouse? The text provides no explanation because it presumes comprehension. Additional populations existed beyond Eden's experimental boundary, populations predating the Adamic project, and Cain possessed clearance for integration with them. The name Enoch, Chanok, signifies initiated, prepared, committed to service. Cain's offspring underwent preparation for operational responsibilities. The city Cain established wasn't mere urban planning. The Hebrew Ir indicates observation tower, surveillance post, monitoring facility. Cain was constructing intelligence infrastructure throughout pre-Adamic regions. The following genealogy isn't family documentation. It's an operational registry. Irad, the courier, communications expert. Metuel, divinely enhanced, modified by the Elohim. Methushel, operative of divine forces, Elohim agent. Lamech, commander, military authority. Each designation describes functionality within the expanding surveillance network Cain's lineage established. Yet the parallel genealogy reveals the complete picture. While Cain's descendants developed operational systems, Adam's line through Seth preserved the reproductive program. Genesis 4:25 reports, Vaida Adam odet ishtovatelid, ben vatikra et shemoshet ki shatli Elohim zera acher tachat hevel ki harago Cain. And Adam knew his wife again, bearing a son named Seth, for Elohim has granted me replacement seed for Abel, whom Cain eliminated. Zera Aka, replacement seed, not replacement offspring. Alternative hereditary line substituting terminated breeding inventory. Seth wasn't simply Abel's successor. He represented continuation of biological procedures Cain had sabotaged. The reproductive experiment demanded particular hereditary results, and Seth's lineage would deliver them. Two parallel initiatives emerging from one disruption incident. Cain's descendants constructing management systems, Seth's line preserving hereditary protocols, both serving identical entities through different operational channels. Mesopotamian records confirm this dual pathway development. The Sumerian king list identifies two ruler categories, those descending from heaven and those emerging from mountains. The first established infrastructure and cities, the second preserved pure bloodlines for divine interaction. Identical pattern, alternative cultural encoding, but here arrives the transformation that recontextualizes everything. The voice cursing Cain wasn't Eden's original speaker. Genesis 4 consistently uses WH alone when management addresses Cain, but Eden always featured WH Elohim, the compound title indicating mediated communication representing the Elohim. When managing Cain's disruption, the interface operated autonomously, making field determinations without primary command consultation. The YHWH protocols possessed independent authority for reassigning personnel who sabotaged breeding operations. The system cursing Cain wasn't divinity. It was middle management protecting experimental integrity, which means Cain's elimination of Abel wasn't violence's original sin. It was the first effective sabotage of meticulously planned reproductive procedures engineered for specific hereditary outcomes. His punishment wasn't celestial justice. It was strategic reassignment by management, sophisticated enough to recognize that someone capable of disrupting primary protocols might prove valuable in secondary operations. They didn't exile Cain. They promoted him to shadow operations, granted him new territory, protective classification, and authority establishing surveillance networks among populations predating current experiments. His curse became recruitment into a parallel hierarchy operating alongside yet distinct from the official reproductive program. Every city Genesis subsequently mentions, constructed by Cain's descendants. Every technological breakthrough, metalworking, musical instruments, livestock management, developed through Cain's lineage. While Seth's line preserved hereditary purity for invoking YHWH's name, Cain's descendants built civilization's infrastructure under protective measures preventing their elimination. Two bloodlines, two initiatives, unified management, divergent objectives. The question isn't why divinity cursed Cain. The question becomes what hereditary outcome justified creating an entire parallel operational framework after its disruption. What were they engineering Seth's lineage to generate? And why did they require Cain's line managing populations excluded from the reproductive experiment? The answer lies hidden in a single word that changes everything about the deluge. Soon, we'll decode why Noah wasn't selected for righteousness, but for his genetics. The phrase perfect in his generations doesn't indicate moral purity. It means genetically uncompromised. And discovering what contamination they sought to prevent exposes why the flood wasn't divine wrath. It was a sterilization measure, and Noah wasn't the survivor. He was the specimen requiring preservation. The waters that destroyed the ancient world weren't judgment, they were containment. And what they were containing will transform your understanding of why we're still here.